Hello and welcome to a very special episode of App Stories. Today's episode is sponsored by Widgetsmith and Steamclock. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is a very tired Federico Viticci. How are you, Federico?
I'm very tired, but also very happy. It's the biggest day of the year, for me at least.
Yes.
It's iOS 26 and iPadOS 26 review day, and it's also, all the 26s are coming out this week.
All the big 26s. It's macOS 26 day.
macOS 26 day as well, because this year we're publishing 2 reviews in the same day. So there's a lot of words happening on MacStories. Plus, we're doing this podcast episode, which is going to be audio and video, of course, as always. And there's going to be more reviews coming out on MacStories this week for watchOS 26 and visionOS 26. Can you believe it, John? The visionOS is jumping from 2 straight to 26.
Well, I've read Devin's review, and there are a lot of updates in visionOS, so I think it makes sense that it goes from 2 to 26.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So
I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, but you and I, we're publishing our iOS and iPadOS. That's me, you, macOS 26 reviews today on MacStories. Yes. Mine is, by the time you're listening to this, the review should be on MacStories.
It'll be out. But as we record, we've got a couple hours to go.
We're doing this a couple of hours before, and yours will be out later tonight, so people can take the time. I think if you are shall we start immediately? I mean, we're going to talk about our reviews. We're going to talk about some of the key themes. I read your macOS Tahoe review. You read mine. What was the word count on mine? 38,000?
Something like that. And mine's a modest like 12 or 13, something like that.
John's review is dessert, so you can have the main courses with mine, and then you can get a little nice dessert with John's macOS Tahoe review. And obviously there's going to be a lot of extras, a lot of perks for Club MacStories members. There are details for all of these in the show notes and in an article on MacStories. So that's sort of a brief intro before we get started.
Yes. It's a very good time to join the club because you can get all those perks all at once, plus all the past stuff that we do. Mm-hmm. Before we get started, though, Federico, I want to briefly mention a couple of new podcasts that we have at MacStories, because these are fantastic shows that everybody should check out when they have a little time. The first one is First Last Everything by Jonathan Reed. And you may know Jonathan from some of the writing he's done on the site and the club, or if you're in the club Discord, you know Jonathan from there. He's interviewing all sorts of creative people from a really interesting angle, which is the technology that shaped kind of their creative life. What are they obsessed with? Maybe if it was Federico being interviewed, it would be the iPad. But this, the first interview in this series is Tom Hitchens, who's a YouTuber. It does a design and Apple-related YouTube channel. And Tom talks about all the technology that kind of shaped his career. And then Jonathan's going to be talking to a bunch of other guests over the course of a season, because this is our first seasonal show. It'll go for 8 weeks, and then I'll take a little brief hiatus over the holidays and be back in the new year with new guests that he's already lining up. So a lot of great people. If you listen to NPC this week, you probably heard that Brendan's going to be on one of the episodes, but there are a bunch of other people.
There was a spoiler on NPC about it.
There was a spoiler. I'm going to spoil it here too, because I think everybody should listen to Brendan, especially since he recorded that like a week after he left his old job. The second show is Cozy Zone, which is an extension of Comfort Zone, which you probably already know from MacStories. That's Matt Birchler and Chris Lawley and Lilian. They all have extended Comfort Zone with Cozy Zone. This is a paid extension. So for $5 a month or $50 a year, you can get even more of their hijinks, more contests, more discussions, stuff that's a little broader than just kind of the tech angles that they cover in Comfort Zone. They've got one episode out already that was free for everyone to try, and you can go to the Comfort Zone podcast feed to get that and see if it's for you. And the first fully paid episode will be out this week. So with that, Federico, that's my hype man pitch right there for these 2 excellent shows from 4 great people.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the thing. I have been living with my review for 3 months. Started taking notes and doing research 3 months ago in June. As I've been doing for the past few years, I have condensed the writing process down to 2 weeks, where I basically hit the ground running because I have an outline, I have notes, I have everything ready for me after 2.5 months. And then in the final half, that's where the writing and the editing and everything happens. But I've been living with this thing for so long. I honestly, you reach a point with any creative endeavor that takes, a certain amount of time where you absolutely cannot stand looking at the thing anymore. So just ask me questions, whatever you want, whatever you want to talk about.
You can't stand looking at it, and you also can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like I think I've been boring Jennifer to death with, did you know you can do this in macOS? She doesn't care.
No.
She doesn't care at all.
I get it. I can relate. Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, I think the place to start is with Liquid Glass because the design of both iOS and iPadOS is changing pretty significantly this year. And I think you did a really nice job in your review of breaking down kind of what Liquid Glass means, because after all, it's really just a marketing term. And as I kind of describe it in my review, it's like, it doesn't really in and of itself mean a lot. And I think that a lot of people have taken it for something that it's not. But I think what you've done is a really nice job of breaking down both components of it, because there really is a glass piece and a liquid piece, which you walk through in the beginning of your review.
Yeah, that was the realization that I had a couple of months ago. After the first few betas of iOS and iPadOS 26, I realized, well, a lot of us seem to be just considering the glass portion of Liquid Glass. And I mean, that's the thing that catches your attention first, right? You're updating your phone to iOS 26 and you're looking at it and you see that it's not a major drastic redesign. It's not a major change. It doesn't drastically change the look or the layout of your favorite apps. But you look at it and you can see the translucencies. You can see the glass. You can see these new visual effects. And that was the thing that I think a lot of people in the beginning of the beta season last June until July, everybody was just focused on that. But the more I kept thinking about it, the more I realized, well, why is it called, though, Liquid Glass? Because we're just thinking about the glass, we're just considering glass, we're taking screenshots of the glass, but what about the liquid? And I think in putting together this review and in writing this story, I think I've landed on a conclusion of mine, on a thought that I have, which is the glass is a material, and it makes sense more on certain devices than it does on others. Obviously, and famously, Liquid Glass was inspired by visionOS, and in visionOS, it makes sense to have windows made of glass because you got to be able to see your surroundings. And it maybe makes a little less sense as you explore in your review on macOS, where, well, you're just using a laptop or you're using an iMac. You don't really want to see through the windows. But the glass, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the material is replaceable, right? I can imagine a future in which we're using a different material. And maybe it's called frost, maybe it's called metal, maybe it's called whatever. But the liquid part, I think that's the more interesting. And that's the aspect of Liquid Glass that not a lot of people have thought about, have really examined in depth. This idea of a user interface that has the optical properties of glass, cool, but also the dynamics of fluid, like fluid dynamics. This idea of a user interface where buttons can morph fluidly into toolbar items, or when you press a button, the button doesn't just open a menu under the button becomes the menu. Or when you're swiping back and forth between a list of items and an individual item, you can see the search bar that sort of morphs into a toolbar. This idea of Apple is not necessarily hiding the UI from you anymore. The UI is transforming in real time on screen to offer you the controls that make the most sense depending on the screen you're looking at. And I think that's interesting, especially when you consider a future down the road where maybe you will be wearing glasses and, space for user interface will be at a premium. And so sort of combining these two aspects of how do you make the UI as compact and as small as possible, but also how do you not end up in a place where you're hiding the controls from people and you're making the UI more difficult. Well, you make the UI something that is fluid, something that can morph into something else.
Right. And I think that liquid quality of liquid glass adds a liveliness and an organic character to the UI that I think actually creates affordances where, I see where this menu came from. This menu came from this button that turned into the menu. And I know you explained that in the review. And to me, like, I was thinking about this as I was reading your review, because you and I, we look at a lot of video games and we think a lot about graphics on handheld consoles with our show NPC. And there's a quality to me that's adjacent here with some of liquid glass, and that Apple is taking the graphics horsepower of these incredibly powerful Apple Silicon chips now, and it's using it in a way that to me is very much like the animation of a video game, in that you think historically about the iPhone or the iPad's UI, it was always just static images. I mean, sure, there were animations that went from one static image to another static image, but this is more alive than this. This is more, the animation isn't just the parts in between. It's kind of the part of the whole UI in kind of the same way that you see in a modern video game.
Yeah, it's really almost like it is a rendering engine, very similar to a video game where, and I talk about this in the review, where Apple is absolutely flexing like the things that they can do with Apple Silicon now. There's no other platform at the moment, and I've tried them all up. I have my fair share of Android devices. I have multiple Windows devices, including a gaming PC right under my desk. I've tried them all. I have a Google Pixel Fold review unit. Nobody has this kind of rendering engine in real time that can be delivered today at scale across 6 different operating systems, because Apple today is releasing all of the 26 family of operating systems.
And a whole line of phones, from the most inexpensive phone to the highest end phone. That's really impressive to me too. This is not just like a high end feature, right?
Yeah, I mean, who's doing that? Like, who is operating at that kind of scale with 2.3 billion active devices or something? Each, in theory, or most of them at least, theoretically eligible for the 26 updates, and for all of those devices will be running this redesign. This design refresh with 120 hertz refresh rate and animations, everything happening in real time. All of these optical properties of glass, such as the Apple calls it spherochromatism. It's basically chromatic aberration if you're used to to photography and how lenses work. Like all of that stuff happening on phones from the most, like you mentioned, from the most inexpensive one all the way up to the fanciest possible iPad Pro, for example. But overall, I think all this to say that there are design issues with liquid glass, right? And you mentioned those in your macOS review, and I have some screenshots in mind, for example, where I show you're looking at when you have some liquid glass controls on top of a certain color or on top of other material, some portions of text are illegible. Like there are readability and legibility issues in the liquid glass that is shipping today. At the same time, I think over the past 3 months, and I have shared in July, in June, like my fair share of criticism for liquid glass at the time. I just feel personally, and this is my takeaway from that chapter, that on balance, it is not a disaster. It is not. I feel like if you are, and this is, don't mind me for getting a little maybe too philosophical for a moment, for any kind of creative effort where you're doing something really different, it is inevitable that you're going to break a few things. It is inevitable that you're going to have some bumps in the first version of something, We have all launched website redesigns, and when you do, you come across those minor issues in the first release.
Things that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, and also I guess people who say, well, Apple should have not released liquid glass in this shape today. First of all, I don't think it's the catastrophe that some people paint it out to be. But even then, I think all the folks saying, there are people saying we didn't need liquid glass. Things were just fine the way they were. But if you follow that trajectory, right, you're never going to do anything new ever again. If you don't want to break the norms of the things that used to be, you're never going to try new ideas. You're never going to try new designs. You're never going to try new interactions. And so I think, and this is how my review, in fact, opens with this dichotomy in iOS and iPadOS 26, which is the old versus the new versus the familiar. It opens with a quote from Mad Men, the TV show. This idea of, in advertising, there are two concepts that are equally powerful: new and nostalgia. And in many ways, this, iOS and iPadOS 26 are that kind of dichotomy. You have the new with liquid glass, and you have iPadOS, which is basically borrowing from decades of macOS multitasking. But I think you have to make something new eventually, especially if you are a company that sells products to people. Nobody wants to use a phone that looks the same way forever. Otherwise, Apple is going to stop selling phones and people are going to buy phones from somebody else. That's the simple truth. And so if you have to try something new, you're going to break a few things along the way, and you're going to have to refine them and iterate on them and update them. And that's just, the way it's always been and the way it's going to continue to be.
It's just the way software is in general. I mean, there are going to be bugs. There are going to be things that could be better. But I think on balance, I'm right there with you. I think that the liquid glass design on the iPhone and the iPad are really nice, and I've enjoyed using them all summer long myself.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cool, right? That's ultimately the thing. You show it, like every single regular friend in real life that doesn't read MacStories or doesn't follow me for what I do, that I've shown liquid glass to, were like, oh, that's so cool. Like, it looks cool.
Yeah.
It's captivating. It looks nice. It animates beautifully. I think people are going to like it, but we'll see. I mean, the real test will be after today, when millions more people get iOS and iPadOS 26 and see what they think of liquid glass. But yeah, that's the biggest chapter of my review, the design one. And I struggled with it initially, and then it became my favorite. So really happy with it.
This very special OS review edition of App Stories is brought to you by Widgetsmith. Widgetsmith is the premier app for customizing your iPhone that's been downloaded over 125 million times. The reason so many people have downloaded Widgetsmith is because there's no better way to create widgets for your home screen, lock screen, and control center. It lets you do a ton of things, like easily see your calendar, favorite music, the weather, and show off your best photos. Widgetsmith is easy to use with over 150 preset themes too, with new seasonal drops all year long. And of course, you can design your own widgets too. And the latest update, version 8, makes it easier than ever to do that by copying themes and modifying them to your own taste. The app also includes downloadable wallpapers with new ones released every week and the tools to make your widgets match them. Of course, Widgetsmith 8 is fully up to date for iOS 26 with a new liquid glass layout and widgets that look good with clear and tinted home screens too. It also includes tools to make it easier than ever to create widgets, a set of the most popular widgets to get you started, and search for whatever else you might want. So download Widgetsmith today by visiting widgetsmith.app/MacStories. It's free to download, but here's the thing. If you use our link, you'll get a free month of Widgetsmith Premium, which adds a ton of theming options as well as interactive widgets and more. So you really want to use that link. Again, it's widgetsmith.app/MacStories for a free month of Widgetsmith Premium. With Widgetsmith, you can make your phone your own. Our thanks to Widgetsmith for their support of the show. All right, Federico, let's switch gears and talk about the iPad because when we did our previews at the beginning of the summer, when we first got the public betas, you wrote strictly about the iPad and not about liquid glass in the iPhone. And so I think you went into your review probably with having thought about that a little bit more, just from the process of having done the writing at the beginning of the summer. Has your views on the iPad changed and iPadOS changed at all over the period of time?
It's remained pretty consistent, which is iPadOS 26 is one of the best things that has happened to the iPad platform in the past decade. Really, the arguably maybe the most important one since the original iPad Pro from 10 years ago in 2015.
Yeah.
It's after a few years of not knowing exactly what I was going to do with the iPad, iPadOS 26 makes me want to work from the iPad again. Even though, I'm using a Mac right now, I have a Mac Studio, I have a MacBook Pro, I could, in theory, get more things done on a Mac, but there's a quality, there's an invisible quality to iPadOS and to iPadOS 26 running on the iPad that makes me want to use it. Right? It's the fact that it's not just a laptop, it's not just a tablet, it's a combination of both. Right? And so my only complaint about iPadOS 26 is that I want Apple to continue doing more. I think the work is never going to be done, right? The work is never done. And so there are things in iPadOS 26 that are not here yet, like the new Spotlight from macOS 26, which we're going to talk about, or some of the new shortcuts automations that are not, that are Mac only, surprisingly, or some differences, the menu bar is not like a fixed element on screen. I wish there were more settings for local capture when it comes to recording audio and video on the iPad. But on balance, I have written the entire review on the iPad using iPadOS 26.
What are the big ticket items? What are the things that have made the biggest difference for you in iPad 26?
The windowing, like for sure. Just being able to open, especially with an external display. I would leave my iPad on my desk here, connected to my external monitor, and I would open like 8 or 9 windows on the monitor. And it was like, I know that it's not a new idea because people have been doing it forever on the Mac, but just being able to have that freedom and to have the system not fight me as it used to do with Stage Manager. I was able to put some windows off screen and have Notion open on one side and then ChatGPT and Claude on the other, maybe kick off a web search in Perplexity and then also have like another Safari window with another tab for my Notion database, like intentionally making a mess of my workspace.
You and I sound like we have the same research workflow these days.
Yes, that is the dream, but just having that freedom. And then, of course, when I was done working at my desk, or if I just wanted a change of pace, I would just grab the iPad because it's a tablet, and I could keep multitasking on a smaller screen because I have a 13-inch iPad Pro. I don't have a 27-inch iPad Pro like my monitor, but on a smaller screen, I could still multitask with multiple windows using touch. And so iPadOS 26 is like the perfect combination. And I think I described it in the review as it's the kind of, right now the iPad and iPadOS 26 is the kind of combo that makes the platform true to itself in the sense that it's because of the features and the nature of the iPad, you have a computer that is both a tablet and a laptop with the features of both, right? With keyboard shortcuts and the menu bar, but also touch and the Apple Pencil and all of those things together. And you don't have to sacrifice, and you're not put in a place where you're wishing for windowing and multitasking, but there's that asterisk at the end, as it used to be with Stage Manager. Like, yes, you have windowing, but it's not what you think. No, in this case, it's freeform windowing, and that has been the biggest change for me in just putting together a 38,000 word story. With a lot of research. I wouldn't have done it. Like, I couldn't have done it last year with iPadOS 18 for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a really important point about the fact that the windowing works even with touch, because you could imagine a parallel universe in which Apple said, well, this is a pro user feature. We're only going to give it to people if it's connected to some sort of keyboard and pointing device. Yeah. And that, I think, is where you can really see the difference in approach from this is not just turning the iPad into a Mac. It's borrowing ideas from the Mac, but it's also shaping those ideas to the way people use the iPad. And touch is one of the most unique things about the iPad compared to a Mac.
Yeah. And there's even a delight in doing that on an iPad mini. I mean, you can install iPadOS 26 on an iPad mini.
It's amazingly usable on a mini. I've tried it even on, I don't even have the most current iPad mini, Federico. I have the one from before that, and it works perfectly well on there too.
Yeah, my hot take / prediction is that iPadOS 26 on an iPad mini is the best real concept that you can use to imagine what an Apple foldable may look like next year. If the iPhone Fold, when you fold it open, does support multitasking, I think using today iPadOS 26 on an iPad mini gives you a pretty good idea of what that could feel like. It's a small landscape environment where you can open a bunch of tiny windows that are tiny. They're not big, expansive windows like on an iPad Pro, but you can still multitask. You can still have multiple windows on a small device that you can hold in both of your hands. It'll be interesting to see if these takeaways for iPadOS 26 on the iPad mini end up informing a future foldable device. But right now, if you want to have essentially a bunch of iPhone windows, multitask with those iPhone-sized windows all together, like 5 or 6 or 8 windows on an iPad mini, you can do that in portrait. Or if you don't want to, you can just use 2 windows at the same time, make them slightly bigger, and it totally works. And then, of course, if you want to, there's a spectrum, right? And if you want to have the biggest, strongest possible iPad, go all the way up to a 13-inch iPad Pro. So you can have a bunch of, I think you can work pretty well with 4 to 5 windows on screen on an iPad at the same time. And then, of course, if you connect an external monitor, you can go crazy, open 12 or something. Yeah.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by our friends at Steamclock. Steamclock Software is a design and development studio that ships great mobile apps. They work with growing tech companies to level up their consumer-facing experience on iOS and Android. Oftentimes, Steamclock's clients know that they need a great mobile app to grow their business, but they don't have the capacity to build one themselves. Or they've taken a first crack at the problem, but they often wind up with an app that's kind of janky. What all of Steamclock's clients have in common, though, is that they care about a great customer experience. While Steamclock can build apps using React Native and other cross-platform tools, they also have deep expertise in building excellent native apps in Swift and Kotlin. They're also great at helping companies weigh the trade-offs of these different approaches. So, if that sounds like you, if your business is growing and you want your customers to have a great app experience, visit steamclock.com/appstories and get in touch with Steamclock. Again, that's steamclock.com/appstories. Get in touch with them to see how they can help. Our thanks to Steamclock for their support of the show. Right. Before we switch over to macOS, Federico, I do want to ask you about apps, both system apps and third-party apps. Both kind of what have been the highlights for you in terms of both Apple's system apps and maybe some of the third-party things that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see, for context, I've received about, I think I lost track in the past week, but just eyeballing it, I think I received about 150 emails from indie developers, all indie developers who reached out with their iOS and iPadOS 26 betas to me specifically. All of them, essentially all of them, supported Liquid Glass. So Liquid Glass, like it or not, if you are an indie developer, it's here, you have to support it, you have to do it. Yeah. The other, though, so Liquid Glass was kind of a given in third-party apps. The other was Apple Intelligence and the foundation models. I have had a lot of fun playing around with third-party apps that have implemented the new local on-device small Apple Intelligence Foundation model to offer AI features in their apps. So the likes of Chronicling by Rebecca Owen or Carrot Weather or Drafts, all of these apps are implementing the Apple Intelligence local model in different ways. Like, for example, in Chronicling, you can log your coffee intake just using natural language. In Drafts, you can query your Drafts library by asking things like, hey, do I have any notes about, I don't know, pineapple on pizza? Hopefully not, but if you do, you can find them with Drafts and Apple Intelligence. Or for example, another favorite one was it's called Activus AI, and Activus is this like a version of what the rumors are suggesting that Apple is going to do next year, like an AI assistant for HealthKit on your iPhone.
Right.
So a little totally private, totally on-device AI Apple Intelligence-based assistant that takes a look at your health data and provides useful insights and commentary about, like, for me, for example, you noticed that in the past week I was walking less because I was finishing the iOS review. And so those implementations in third-party apps have been interesting. I want to mention... There's
really nothing like testing health apps during review season.
Yeah, it's bad. Makes you look bad.
It's so bad. You're like, you're not walking, you're not sleeping.
You're a horrible person. Shortcuts has been a lot of fun to play with, especially because of the Apple Intelligence integration. I'm going to have a whole bunch of Apple Intelligence shortcuts coming out next week for Club MacStories Plus and Premium members, especially now that the GPT-5 integration in Apple Intelligence in shortcuts is live. So you can create these really interesting hybrid shortcuts that use GPT-5 in the cloud to process native variables and data from shortcuts. It's going to be a fun lesson to explain that. Photos was sort of reverted back to the old design. So you no longer have a unified view in Photos. You're going back to, your library. So just the grid in the main screen and then your collections in a separate tab. I'm a big fan of the camera, the simplification of the camera. So by default, the camera shows you just photo and video. And then if you can swipe, you can see all the other modes. All of the menus in the camera app have been redesigned for liquid glass. Looks really nice. And then there's a whole other collection of like grab bag items that I shared in the review, like new background sounds in settings. If you want to play some white noise or like rain sounds or a train sound in the background, just using Control Center on your iPhone. Some changes to AirPods, including the ability to use an AirPod as remote camera shutter. So you can take a picture just by pressing and holding on an AirPod. That's very cool. And and obviously changes in messages. So you can now use wallpapers in messages, like as a chat background. You can do polls. It's a bunch of great changes in messages this year. And that's, we have split the apps between my review and your review. So what is not in mine will be in John's review of macOS.
Absolutely. Federico, is there anything else we should talk about with either iOS or iPadOS before we switch gears?
I want to switch gears to macOS, and I want to ask you immediately. So one of the key themes of your review, first of all, congratulations. This is what, your sixth review of macOS? Something like that?
It goes back to like Catalina.
I mean, I cannot remember those names. One of your key themes for macOS Tahoe is, first of all, you're kind of similar to mine in that you're saying, I've seen the complaints from people over the summer who absolutely hate macOS Tahoe, and I don't get it. So there's that angle.
Yes.
And there's the other angle, I think. You have these two themes in your review. That one, and the second one is this idea of macOS meeting users halfway, meeting users where they are, giving users features where they're working. And I kind of want to go deeper into both of these themes with you.
Yeah, I think that meeting people where they're at is an important thing with something like the Mac, because the Mac is a mature product that's been around for a very long time, and a lot of people use it to get their work done. And so they are, there is, I think, oftentimes with the Mac, more resistance to change than there is on some of Apple's other platforms. And for me, I think of the Mac and I think about Tahoe as being having a set of really great new features, but also being the kind of OS update where you can kind of ignore that stuff if you want. I mean, I don't think people should. I really do encourage people in the review to try it, because I think that they'll find that there's a lot of things that can improve their workflows and productivity in Tahoe. But I spent my entire summer primarily working in Tahoe, but I also kept Sequoia on a laptop so that when I wanted to get away from my desk and work somewhere else, I was moving back and forth, which is a really good way to get a sense for how disruptive is this OS compared to, past updates. And it wasn't disruptive to me in the least. I mean, to the point where it never really occurred to me that I was using a different operating system, because the stuff that I just do day in and day out, whether it's editing podcasts or video or writing or researching, all that stuff, all those well-worn paths through the system that I have with the workflows I use were all the same. They didn't change. The things that changed were things that I intentionally sought out and changed in order to see how they had changed. So for instance, on my desktop Mac, I took Raycast off the machine and just used Spotlight all summer for everything. And you know what? It's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. It's like head and shoulders above where Spotlight ever has been. Spotlight is one of those features that gets talked about almost every single year in the macOS update. And a lot in the recent years, it's done things like add ways to quickly get information about maybe a movie or an actor or a sports team or a place. You get kind of web adjacent search type information from places like Wikipedia or IMDb. And that's great. I mean, I don't have any problem with that, but it's not something that I ever really needed or wanted. And I think it's even less necessary these days with the ability to query chatbots with LLMs. You've both got web search and LLMs now. So what I was really excited about with Spotlight in particular is the fact that everything is super keyboard driven, and I've got categories now of things I can access, whether it's apps or actions or files, and even the clipboard. It's all right there at my fingertips, and that's been a really great way to use Tahoe this summer. So from my perspective, when I look at Tahoe, I look at an update that if someone hasn't been using this all summer long like I have, if they download it and try it today, I don't think that they'll find anything jarring. Yes, they will see some liquid glass differences, which to my mind are a lot subtler on the Mac in general than they are on places like the iPhone and the iPad. That's not true in every app. There is a difference between how Apple treats liquid glass in an app like the Finder or Safari as compared to something like music or podcasts. That more translucent look does exist on the Mac. It's in FaceTime and music and podcasts, a bunch of different apps, maybe, like 5 or 6. But in most places, you've got more of a frosted glass look. And that's true of the toolbars in things like Safari and the Finder. And I really like that look. I like the fact that it's layered, because it does distinguish between the things that you use to do actions and the things that you're reviewing. It also groups your icons together for the first time in a long time, right? I mean, even though that toolbar is more translucent than it was in Sequoia and prior versions, when you scroll up, there's a more opaque grouping of the icons in your toolbar, so that when you scroll up and something's behind there, it's not going to distract from those icons like it would necessarily if that wasn't there and they were just on the toolbar. So I think that the liquid glass thing I know a lot of people don't like it. I think it's perfectly fine. I actually like it on the Mac. I mean, perfectly fine is like underselling it. I think it's actually well done. I think that there are some weird inconsistencies and some edge cases and things that I don't like having the music controls at the bottom of the window. And there's some strange differences in how translucent things are in the Finder that I talk about, depending on how you have your views set up. But by and large, I really like liquid glass a lot too. And I guess your other question was about kind of the criticism of this. And I try really hard when I do a review to try to see it from a lot of angles, from a lot of perspectives of different users, not just me. I mean, John Voorhees likes macOS Tahoe, and good for him, right? But I try to think about all the people who read MacStories. And one of the things that I don't like about the modern internet is that a lot of things get prejudged before they're really tried in any kind of thorough way. I mean, that's just the world of hot takes on social media in 2025. And I think that, I mean, there's a lot of people chasing clout and views and, and followers. And I really feel like I've seen a lot of people comment to me, "Oh, I'm not gonna install Tahoe because it's a mess." I'm like, it's not a mess. There are no like show-stopping bugs. Sure, there are some things that are maybe glitchy, but there's always something glitchy in all software, including macOS. And every 1.0 is going to have some glitches, but it's nothing big or major. And I think that with an operating system like this, it really does pay to give it a try, especially if you have a second Mac and you have an ability to fall back if you don't like Tahoe for some reason. But I don't think that people will be shocked by Tahoe's look or shocked by the way it works. I think that it lets me get my work done in exactly the same way that Sequoia did. I have not felt any impediments to any of my workflows, whether they're simple things like dealing with the web and email to the more complex Logic projects and Final Cut Pro projects that I do. It's all just worked. And on top of that, you add these layers of new features like Spotlight, like the menu bar, which I think is another big improvement with the control center, right? All those things together, that just gives you extras that over time you can explore at your own pace and decide whether they're for you or not. They won't be for everybody, but I do think they're worth trying out because I think they're very good.
One of the something that obviously stood out to me in your review was the new menu bar and control center, and the ability to put, to create multiple control centers actually, and also to put like your explanation of like maybe this is what the future of the menu bar and customization is gonna be like, where you can still obviously use menu bar apps, but maybe the path forward is going to be these native controls that you can put in the menu bar. And you can see, Apple maybe preferring to have that sort of modern, more consistent menu bar, especially if that menu bar eventually finds its way to iPadOS. That is one of the features that we don't have on iPadOS 26 today. But that to me, like, sure, people like to customize their menu bars. What if instead we use Control Center and we used App Intents and we gave users the ability to create multiple control centers and put the icons for those controls in there, and those controls are based on the same technology that people are using for widgets and Siri and Apple Intelligence and all of those things. It's classic Apple, essentially.
It is.
Yeah.
Because the menu bar, I mean, the problem with the menu bar historically is it's horizontal and screens are different sizes. And especially now that you have notches and things in Macs and Mac laptops, you want to condense that down somehow. More and more people are making these menu bar apps. By having control center panels, multiples of them, you can extend them down from the menu bar, not just across the menu bar. And Apple has, with Tahoe, added a bunch of system stuff. There's all kinds of things that you can add in there, like taking voice memos or tiling your windows. All sorts of different controls have been added on the system level. What's a little disappointing is that there isn't a lot of third-party support yet. I literally one day sat down and made sure that I had updated every single beta that had been sent to me. And then I opened like 70 apps at once. There's a screenshot in the review of this, because a lot of times things like widgets and control panel controls don't show up if you haven't opened the app and clicked through the test flight dialogues that pop up. That's just like a thing with test flight. And so I went through and did that and made sure I had opened them all up, restarted my machine, and looked. And at first, there was nothing but drafts. And then at the very end, I also got ScreenFloat, which is an excellent screenshotting app that I like a lot. And both of those apps have menu bar apps already that have these same features in them. But what this lets you do is it lets you turn off those menu bar apps and then pick and choose the features that are important to you. Because if you have a menu bar app, you have all the features, obviously. But with this, it's been broken down into what are effectively like shortcut actions, where you can put the ones you want in the order and with the other apps that you want. You can have, one dedicated just to ScreenFloat or drafts, or you might only want something to search your drafts and put that in amongst all your other system controls. It gives you a ton of flexibility in how you design this. I mean, I've got one that's kind of a hodgepodge of system stuff, and I've got another one that's just HomeKit, because it allows me to control the lights in my office, for instance, and some of the other things that I have with HomeKit. I like this system a lot, and I really would encourage developers who are out there who have been thinking about this to embrace it, because I do think that it's the kind of thing that in the long run is going to spread to other platforms, and it's going to become more and more important on the Mac as well.
Yeah. And finally, I kind of wanted to wrap up this segment about your review. I liked how you landed on this conclusion where you say it's not that between macOS, Sequoia, and Tahoe, I don't see this disaster that people are saying. I see more similarities between Sequoia and Tahoe, and I enjoyed my time working with Tahoe, and the best part of wrapping up this review is that I can now get to install Tahoe on all the other computers that I was keeping on Sequoia. And I thought that was really fun. Is that really, that's how you feel, right? You just want to update everything.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's hard about the writing process at the very end of review season is because I've only got Tahoe sitting on my Mac Studio right now, I have to sit at my desk all day long, all night long hours sitting in my office, because it's just not convenient to take a laptop and move to another room. And I'll be like, oh yeah, but how does this look on Tahoe exactly? It just doesn't work that way. So what I've done right now, I have a setup that's the Mac Studio where I've been writing the review, and I have a Mac Mini that it's on loan from Apple that is connected to a portable display, and that's running Sequoia. And it's literally right next to my Tahoe setup. So I can kind of compare and contrast them the whole time. And I've been dying to get Tahoe, especially on the laptop, so I can take it with me, just another part of the house, to a coffee shop or wherever. And I think this is just like how I'm wired. People with the Mac, I know that it probably drives people crazy that I do this, but I can't wait to get the new beta on my Mac when I get home from WWDC. It's an adventure. It's new. It's different. It ties into the newness that you talked about in your review. For me, the exploration of a new OS is something I look forward to every single year. It really gets me excited. And then I find, not everything in there is going to be for me. I mean, and I talk about the stuff that I don't really like in Tahoe, like some of the messages stuff isn't for me, but there's a lot that I really do like, and I want to have it everywhere now. I don't want it just sitting at my desk in my office. I want to take it with me on the go. And now I get to do that. And I literally have not done it yet because I have not published the review yet. But as soon as I do, as soon as I know that I don't have to go back and double check something in Sequoia, I will absolutely put it on both that Mac Mini and on the MacBook Pro that I've got.
Yeah. Well, congrats again for finishing your review.
You too.
Thank you. We've done it. So, if you're an AppStories listener, if you're watching on YouTube or other places, the best way to enjoy all of this is obviously by going to macstories.net. You can find the articles there. You can also, if you prefer these are long articles. These are long reviews with a table of contents, multiple chapters and sections.
Right.
You can find ebook versions of all of these reviews and the ones that we will release later this week for watchOS 26 and visionOS 26. Now, my review is available for all Club MacStories members. That's $5 a month or $50 a year. And all of the other reviews, plus even more extras, such as my set of shortcuts for Apple Intelligence and the drafts actions that I used for the making of my review, all of those will be released for Club Plus and Premier members. That's $10 or $12 a month, or $100 or $120 a year. And Club Premier also includes access to the Plus version of this very podcast. Because at the end of this, we're going to keep talking, and there's going to be a whole extra segment, and that's just going to be for AppStories Plus subscribers. Now, the EPUBs, I want to mention this. The ebooks, the ebook versions of our reviews, we release them in EPUB file format, which is an open file format. You can take that EPUB and put it whatever you want. You can put it in Apple Books, you can load it up on your Kindle, or something that I discovered today, you can take the EPUB and upload it to Readwise Reader, right? Because it supports books, and you can read the full EPUB version of my iOS review, for example, with the custom font and theme settings of Readwise Reader. You can listen in Readwise Reader to my iOS
can highlight
review.
and save those highlights.
You can
back
take
to
notes.
Obsidian.
You can
all kinds
ask
of things.
questions to the AI built into Readwise Reader. So that's one of the advantages of the EPUB format that we use for our reviews. And I know that some of you out there have been collecting the EPUBs of our reviews over the years, and we would love it for you to check out this one as well. It also includes, obviously, videos, screenshots, all of the other info, all the details that are on the website. You will find them in the EPUB version, which is a full one-on-one replica of what's on the website. So, all of this is available today. There's going to be links in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, and after we get done with that pro show, Federico and I are going to hit the publish button.
Yeah, it's almost
first
time.
On his review, right? Then on mine. And then I think we're both going to be needing a nap or something.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrate a little bit by sleeping. I want to thank our sponsors for this episode, especially Widgetsmith, that sponsored not just this episode of AppStories, but also Federico's review in general. Check out the latest version of Widgetsmith because it's really cool. As well as I want to thank Steamclock, our other sponsor for this episode. And you can find me and Federico, as he said, at macstories.net, and we're on social media. Just look for Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.